With the Nintendo Switch arriving in a month, the Wii U is on its last legs, and frankly, I think the 3DS is close behind it. It shouldn't be a secret anymore that I am not fond of the handheld system. Though there are plenty of incredible games on the system, I'm happy to see it go in favor of the console handheld hybrid that is the Switch. There are a few more games coming out on the 3DS in the future, though. I'm personally most excited for Pikmin 3DS, which looks to be an interesting take on the franchise in a 2D perspective. Then, for the new 3DS, which I really hope they don't start making any more exclusive games for, we're getting a port of Fire Emblem Warriors, which will also be on the Switch. I plan on getting the Switch version, but if any of you out there happen to have a new 3DS, that might be the game for you. And last but not least, today, Poochy and Yoshi's Woolly World is out, a port of the Wii U game, Yoshi's Woolly World. It's been a long time since I reviewed Yoshi's New Island in preparation for that game, so I thought it would be nice if I compared the two. If you remember anything from that review, I think that New Island is an absolutely disgraceful ripoff of everything that the Yoshi's Island series stands for. It's lazy, it's easy, and it adds absolutely nothing new to the formula whatsoever. But then we got Woolly World, an absolute delight which completely renovates the series as a whole, and I think for the better. What does New Island do wrong and Woolly World do right? It's time to answer that question in categories. It's like Egoraptor sequelitis, but all the points go to Woolly World. Totally not a ripoff of that series. Then again, it wouldn't be the only thing in this video that's a complete ripoff. Category 1, the art style. Let's start on a positive note for New Island, shall we? Its art style was one of the few things I praised about it. Everything looked like it was made out of clay, which was a nice contrast from previous Yoshi's Island games looking like crayon. I'm not saying that the crayon art style was bad, but the clay was a nice change. In Woolly World, as you can plainly see if you're not blind or don't have eyes or something, everything is made of yarn, much like Kirby's Epic Yarn for the Wii. Epic Yarn made great use of its art style to add gameplay variety that felt completely different from any other Kirby game. Woolly World doesn't necessarily do this, instead it simply feels like another Yoshi's Island game. However, there are many aesthetic changes that were made. Instead of eggs, there are now yarn balls which can tie up some enemies instead of immediately killing them. They can also be used to make hidden platforms or pipes to go into. Just the same, certain walls can be unraveled with Yoshi's tongue to reveal hidden paths. There are also other walls which can be pushed to fold like an accordion, which reveals even more secrets. Coins have been replaced with beads, like in Epic Yarn, and everything is just really fun to look at. You can see stitches, patches, buttons, and even some knitting needles at some points. Yoshi's signature flutter jump is now a squiggling string of yarn, not just him waving his feet back and forth like in previous games. It reminds me of the super peel-out move from certain Sonic games. If the Paper Mario series knows how to be paper, then Woolly World is the master of being yarn. I should also mention the music of both games. New Island's music seemed as if it was played on kazoos, xylophones, and other childlike instruments. I personally didn't mind how it sounded and thought it complemented the art style well. Others disagreed with me though, and focused on that instead of everything else wrong with the game. Woolly World's music, however, blows that of New Island out of the park. It doesn't have a gimmick, and most of it is remixes of songs from Island 1, but the quality and effort put into it is absolutely incredible. It all sounds amazing, including the original tracks. As I said, it's nothing against New Island's music, but Woolly World's soundtrack is just amazing. Category 2, the story. So I complained a lot about how New Island's story had the exact same premise as Island 1, where Kamek kidnaps baby Luigi, baby Mario falls onto the Yoshi-inhabited island below, and uses his brotherly bond to lead the Yoshi clan to Bowser's castle. The only difference was that New Island took place on Egg Island, not Yoshi's Island like Island 1. As much as I hate to say this, somehow that's a lot better than Woolly World's story. On Craft Island, all but 2 Yoshis, those being the ones you play as for local co-op multiplayer, are turned into yarn. Save them! That's it. There are no babies, no storks, and no convoluted time travel bullshit to worry about. I like that it's more original than New Island, but I think they might have oversimplified it just a bit. Look at Yoshi's Story, one of the few other Yoshi titles not to feature babies. In it, Baby Bowser steals the Super Happy Tree and turns Yoshi's Island into a picture book. Why nothing like that here? Why couldn't he have been the one to turn the island into wool so that Kamek could unravel and kidnap the other Yoshis? That would explain why everything is made of yarn. Or better yet, bring back Yin Yarn from Kirby's Epic Yarn. I know that would cause some crossover complications, but at least it would make sense. How about Yoshi Topsy-Turvy for the Game Boy Advance, with its forbidden pop-up book and all the weird spirits? Nintendo had shown in the past that they're capable of making decent stories that are still simple enough for kids to understand, but here it just seems like they pulled another Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars. Then again, for reasons I'll get to later, I don't think that any kids will be playing this for very long. Category 3. Originality and level design. My biggest complaint about New Island was how everything felt like it was copy-pasted from Island 1. The level mechanics, the world structure, the lack of multiple babies like in Island DS, etc. Woolly World, as much as I hate to say it, seems to fall into the same trap. 6 worlds, only 1 bonus level per world, unlike the 2 per world and 5 worlds in DS, and the reuse of a lot of old level mechanics. I am happy to say that nearly every level in Woolly World features a unique mechanic, usually involving yarn, which keeps the game fresh, even if it's a bit tiresome not knowing what to expect from the next level. Sometimes it can feel like you're playing a completely different game than you were in the last level. However, some of these mechanics are so much fun to play through, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna spend the next few minutes gushing about my favorite ones. Remember in 3-3 when you were attached to scarves which rolled out for you to climb on? Remember in 6-6 when you grabbed onto those sticky conveyor belts and you stuck onto them because of static electricity or some bullshit and you had to climb your way up at some points and they moved really quickly at other points? Remember in 2-3 where you had to throw yarn balls at chain chomps to turn them into chomp rocks that you can roll around and then you could unravel that yarn to turn them back into chain chomps? Remember in 4-6 where the platforms only appeared when the light curtain was shining on them and there were ghost enemies and secret entrances that you could also only see behind the curtain? Remember in 3-1 where the whole level was cookies that flipped out in front of you as platforms? Remember in 6-7 when Kamek was flying around and it was like those levels in Island 1 where he did that and it was really cool even though it was unoriginal? Remember in 3-5 where those boomerang birds from Island 1 returned but they weren't boomerangs, they actually made cloud platforms that you could walk on? Remember in 5-6 where it was like you were going in and out of a log cabin and there were those mysterious moving snake platforms? Remember in 3-2 where it was like a baby mobile over its crib and there are suns and moons and rocket ships and it inspired a Smash Bros stage and there are bouncy ball ducks and actually that level was kind of annoying, but it looks so cool! Okay, I think I'm done. Moving on. Category 4. Difficulty. Actually, I'm not done. Remember in 6-5 where you could turn the boos into balloons by hitting them with a yarn ball, but you could only do it when your back was turned to them, so you had to ricochet the yarn ball off of walls, and it was super annoying at times, especially at this part? And remember in the World 4 special level where you were being chased by that damn naval piranha and you couldn't get all the collectibles in the level in one run, even if you used the magnet badge, which I'll talk about later, because those damn vines kept growing over them and it's auto-scrolling and you can temporarily get rid of Naval Piranha by throwing a yarn ball at it, but that doesn't do jack because of the freaking vines! Jesus Christ, Woolly World is unforgiving with its difficulty. Island 1 was really hard, only made harder by going for all of the collectibles. Island ES toned down the difficulty considerably, but made up for it with its unique gameplay, and was made considerably harder when getting collectibles. Yoshi's New Island, however, is piss easy no matter how you play it, and does nothing to compensate for the lack of difficulty whatsoever. Woolly World decided to make up for this travesty by somehow being so much harder than Island 1 that it makes me want to cry. Repeatedly. With or without getting all the collectibles, which I did by the way, this game wants to hand you your own ass on a silver platter, and then you can just steal that silver platter and sell it for profit. Oh wait, Nintendo just did that. And the game does literally everything in its power to make itself easier for you. Remember how Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D added purchasable items that could make the game easier, like extra hearts, DK barrels, and more item space? Well then, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze went and made some of those changes free, yet the game was still much harder than Returns. Woolly World does the exact same thing, because not only do you have infinite lives, a first for the Yoshi's Island series, but you can spend beads on badges that make the levels even easier for you. Yet they're still really difficult and you will hate yourself by World 5. The game even adds Mellow Mode, where you can give Yoshi a pair of wings so that his flutter jump becomes infinite. If you remember from my review of New Island, the wings also existed in that game if you die enough times, where they blocked my path in 1-4. But in Woolly World, you can activate them whenever the hell you please. I never did, but I've heard from people that the game is still hard in Mellow Mode. And you know what? The extreme difficulty in this game makes it so much more satisfying when you finally beat a level. Every death and failure feels like your fault. There was never a time when I thought, man, that was so cheap. Okay, that's not entirely true. If you get every flower in the 8 main levels of a world, you unlock that world's special level. These special levels can range from really fun, to really cheap, to just stupid hard. They're all very creative, I'll give them that, but these levels want your soul. They'll only ever give you exactly enough hearts to have them full by the end of the level, a gameplay mechanic I'll explain later, and if you miss a collectible, there's usually no going back for it without replaying the entire level. Most of the time they're fast-paced and short, but if you get every flower on every level, including the other special levels, you'll unlock one final level comprised of 6 mini-levels based on each world. This one is more forgiving than the others in terms of hearts, but I'll be damned if I didn't die so many times to running out of hearts, something mostly unheard of in any previous levels, not including boss fights, because this level makes me want to murder everything that is good in this world. It's clever as fuck, but it's hell. Category 5, Collectible Placement. Okay, I guess this is a bit of a subcategory of the last one, but I thought it was worthy of its own place here. New Island, despite being easy as hell, had quite a few instances where the collectible placement was completely unfair and no normal thinking human being would ever be stupid enough to look there, yet they placed them there anyway. What the actual hell, Nintendo? No other Yoshi's Island game would place an invisible cloud above a line of coins that could be collected simply by jumping, so that you would never find it. If it wanted you to throw an egg upwards at it, the game should have put more coins there so the player knew that you had to do more than simply jump. And for fuck's sake, no other Yoshi's Island game has ever been enough of an asshole to place an invisible cloud in the middle of a rotating windmill platform. So how does Woolly World avoid these problems of cheap collectible placement? It's simple, the aforementioned badge system. Instead of coins, Woolly World has beads, much like Kirby's Epic Yarn. There's quite an abundance of beads in each level, so you'll have no shortage of them. You can spend these beads on badges, which can do a variety of things. They can make it so that Yoshi takes no damage to fire or lava, collectibles are pulled towards you like a magnet, Poochy joins you in any level, you can grab collectibles with your tongue or... What? Does that say... See hidden items? This badge is immensely helpful. If you get in range of an invisible cloud, it becomes visible. It shows you which walls can be simply walked through by making them flash white, though I will say, it's subtle enough to still miss sometimes, and the game uses intangible walls to hide collectibles way too much later in the game. The beads that are actually stamp patches, which replace red coins in this game, also flash white, so you know which ones you really need to collect. This solves every problem that New Island presented with its shitty collectible placement. I do hate to admit that later in the game I started preemptively selecting this badge before every level, but I can't recall a single time when I thought the hidden items were in a place that I wouldn't have been able to find on my own if I was observant enough. And while we're on the subject, there are some changes to the amount of collectibles as well. In previous games, Yoshi had a star counter that ticked down every second after he would get hit by an enemy and lose whatever baby he had on him. Because there are no babies in Woolly World, you'd think that things would work like Yoshi's Story, where you had a health bar similar to the 3D Mario games. This isn't necessarily true, however. Instead, you have hearts, and you lose 5 every time you get hit, until you're only left with 1 where you can take 1 more hit before you die. In previous Yoshi's Island games, there were 3 things you had to do to 100% a level. Beat the level with the full 30 stars, or in this case 20 hearts, get 20 red coins, which are now stamp patch beads, which unlock stamps after collecting enough of them, and collect all 5 smiley flowers, which build towards unlocking a game's bonus level. Woolly World adds one more requirement, essentially another set of flowers, the Wonder Wool. Getting all 5 Wonder Wool in a level unlocks that level's Yoshi pattern to play as. These designs are wonderful, and the extra ones you can get by scanning your amiibo are even cooler. The regular Yoshi amiibo actually makes you turn into a non-wool Yoshi, and it can double as a Yarn Yoshi amiibo by duplicating your character in a level. The biggest change when it comes to collectibles, however, is how they're saved between levels. In Island 1 and DS, in order to 100% a level, you had to get all 30 stars, 20 red coins, and 5 flowers in one run. New Island made this a bit easier by only making you collect a single set of collectibles in one run. For example, if you get all 20 red coins in a level but only 2 flowers, you don't have to get any of the red coins again, but you do have to get all 5 flowers in another run. You'd think that I would hate this change because it makes the game easier than prior games in the series, but I actually was okay with it. It was a helpful change that I don't think meant to oversimplify the game like everything else did. Woolly World, however, somehow made things even easier. Once you get a collectible and beat the stage, you have that collectible for good. Even if it's just one stamp patch, flower, or Wonder Wool, you do not have to go back for it. The only thing you need to get all of in one run is hearts, which is reasonable. But oh my god, the fact that they still could make the game so damn difficult, even after making such a momentously beneficial change, is amazing. This is why Woolly World is a better game than New Island. To make up for the collectible system being easier to manage, Woolly World jam-packed its levels full of fair and satisfying difficulty. New Island, on the other hand, made its levels even easier in addition to making the collectible system easier to manage. In simpler terms, Woolly World compensated for simplicity with difficulty, and New Island compensated for it with more simplicity, which isn't compensation at all. Damn it, New Island, I try to compliment you for one simple thing, and you always manage to screw it up somehow. Why? Are you trying to make people hate you? Because newsflash, we do! Category 6, Content. In Island 1 there were 6 worlds, each with 8 levels and 1 bonus level for 100%ing every level in the world. Super Mario Advance 3, the Game Boy Advanced remake of Island 1, added a new level in each world, providing a total of 2 bonus levels per world. Island DS continued this trend by also having 2 bonus levels per world, but only having 5 worlds. New Island, being the unoriginal ripoff of Island 1 that it is, also has 6 worlds and 1 bonus level per world. The previous games also had mini-games that could be played to get more lives, but New Island did away with those in favor of gyroscope-controlled transformation challenges. When you jumped through the goal ring at the end of a stage, a roulette started, and the more flowers you had collected in the level, the higher the chance the roulette had to land on one of them. If it did, in Island 1 and DS, you would play one of the extra life minigames, but since those are nowhere to be found in New Island, instead they gave you as many egg medals as you had flowers. Getting enough egg medals per world unlocks a bastardized version of the in-level transformations from previous games that implements the gyroscope function of the 3DS. It could have been done a lot better, but I think it's mostly harmless. The transformation sections are still set apart from the main levels in Woolly World, but they're no longer gyroscope controlled, and the yarn mechanic makes them a lot more fun. You can, however, restart these as many times as necessary to get all of the collectibles in them. These transformations can be many things, from a sharp-clawed mole, to an umbrella, to a mermaid, to a giant mega ultra yarn Yoshi, which comes with its own amiibo. Wait, it costs how much? $40? But it only has the same functionality as a regular Yarn Yoshi amiibo. With that money, you could buy all 3 colors of those, or Fire Emblem Awakening, or perhaps an inferior version of the game you're already playing. Oh shit, did I go there? So winning the flower roulette at the end of a level in Woolly World lets you play a minigame like the older games, but since you already have infinite lives, instead you only do this to get more beads. As I mentioned earlier, Woolly World also follows the 6-world, 8-level, and 1 bonus level formula. However, there is one more final bonus level at the end of the game, and a boss tent where you can rematch against all the previous bosses moving at a faster speed. Which brings me to... Category 7, Boss Fights. Out of any sub-series in the Mario franchise, the Yoshi's Island series has always had some of the best boss fights. This started way back in Island 1, and only continued on after that with DS. And wouldn't you know it, New Island goes and screws up this trend by having some of the most uninteresting boss fights in the entire series. I will give it some credit though, at least its bosses were original. Except for the final bosses! You won't find Bert the Bashful in New Island, so I guess you could call them somewhat clever, but they're usually pretty simple in terms of how you defeat them. And, not to mention, you can literally heal yourself using red eggs in any boss fight, and that's stupid! You can't do that in Woolly World because yarn balls can be any color, so there's no bonus effects depending on the color. You better not take any damage to these bosses, because if you do, kiss your full hearts bonus goodbye. And that's much easier said than done, because some of these bosses are brutal. A few of them are repeats from Island 1, like Bert the Bashful, Notwing the Koopa, who I'm convinced is actually Hookbill, Naval Piranha, and the final bosses, which are Baby Bowser and Giant Baby Bowser again. But despite the fact that they come from an older game, they're made much more unique by the yarn mechanic. Naval Piranha can go fuck himself, though. I freaking hate this boss because it's garbage in the sped-up boss tent, and how you have so little time to spit a bomb in its mouth when it's on the ground and The original bosses are also really good. One of my favorites was Sniffberg the Unfeeling. He reminded me somewhat of Big Guy the Stilted from Yoshi's Island DS, but he uses ice and you have to knock him off the platforms and into the spikes by pelting him with 3 eggs, and dear god, this boss is so good! But the 8th level in each world isn't the only one that has a boss fight in it, oh no. The 4th levels also have one. Back in Island 1 and DS, this provided us with 2 amazing boss fights in each world. And then there was a new island where every boss in the 4th level was just a different incarnation of Kamek. And unfortunately, it seems to have pulled Woolly World down with it, because Woolly World alternates between incarnations of 2 different bosses, Big Montgomery and Notwing the Koopa. I kinda wish they hadn't done this. I would have liked to see more clever bosses using the yarn mechanics, but at least it's better than New Island's Kamek bullshit. Now let's talk about that final level. If you recall from the New Island review, I despised that game's final level and its 4 unoriginal final boss fights. Woolly World's final level is so much better. There are these 4 Baby Bowser statues that need to be made whole using yarn. 1 white, 1 red, 1 green, and 1 blue. The only issue is that nearly every Shy Guy in the stage is black, so you can only get black yarn balls from them. You can kind of cheat your way through the white one by consuming a skeleton goonie at the beginning of the level, but the others need to be hunted down in a lava section or a water section, and oh, that's a lot of black Shy Guys. And once you turn them all into whole statues, the door opens up into another Kamek section like in Island 1. Okay, this one doesn't really add anything unique. It's the same copy-paste bullshit from New Island. If this wasn't in the level, it may have beaten out GS for having my favorite final level in a Yoshi game. It's really hard to compete with those multiple baby sections, including one for Baby Bowser who you literally fight against in the same level. That's genius. Speaking of fighting against Baby Bowser, yes, he once again fights you in his regular form, this time with the added bonus of summoning lava, and then Kamek turns him giant. However, this giant Baby Bowser boss fight is absolutely my favorite final boss in the entire series. Here's what you have to do. There are 8 floating magenta Wonder Wools hovering around him. Your job is to hit every one of those with a giant yarn ball of your own, which you get 3 of for unraveling an even bigger yarn ball. Once you hit 4 of them, however, he becomes much more aggressive, with falling meteors, lava waves, and all sorts of things. I adore this boss fight. In previous giant Baby Bowser boss fights, you simply threw a giant egg upwards in his general direction and hoped it would hit him to knock him back. Do this a certain number of times and you win. In this one, however, it's so clear where you need to aim your yarn balls. The magenta Wonder will never change position, so you always have to hit him a few times in the front, a few times in the back, and a few times to the side of him. You can't just keep retreating to the back every time. It kinda reminds me of Bowser Jr.'s Mega Hammer boss fight from Super Mario Galaxy 2, which was one of my favorite bosses from that game. I want to see more boss fights like this in the series' future. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind if they made a sequel to Woolly World with the exact same art style and 6-world 8-level format. I love this game. The levels are so clever, the whole game looks beautiful, and it blows anything that New Island had to offer completely out of the water. There is no competition here. For its brilliant combination of simplicity and difficulty, Yoshi's Woolly World is absolutely my favorite game in the series. Maybe not enough to buy it again with inferior graphics, but who knows. I'm Minecraft.derp, and do yourself a favor. Go play this game in some fashion. Whether it's the 3DS port or the original version, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't, and an even bigger disservice if you play Yoshi's New Island instead. Remember in 3.5 where those boomerang birds from Island 1 returned, but they weren't boomerangs, they actually made Remember in 3.5 where there were those boomerang birds from Island 1? Remember in 3.5 where they're... Shit. Remember in 3.5 where those I can't say this! Remember in 3.5 where those boomerang birds from Island 1 returned, but they weren't boomerangs, they could actually make Get 20 red coins, which are now stamp patch beads, which unlock bonus levels. They don't unlock bonus levels. God.